Hello, I'm Shane in Sweden, and this is the last part of our series of videos on how to create a World of Tanks application. And here we're going to create a web application to show our World of Tanks data. I'm using initially here Microsoft Expression just to create a quick mock-up of our website. So I'm going to create a new HTML web page here. Now this really isn't necessary in this project because it's so simple, but generally, when you're building a website, it's useful to create a quick mock-up prototype, and it's useful to use a web editor when you want to create styles, colors, and complex layouts. So we're just going to create our initial web page here, and I'm going to switch to design mode, and we would like some sort of a World Tanks banner. So we add an image here to the web page, and if we click on the image, we can set the properties. And here we need a URL. So we're going to find the World of Tanks image that we can use for our web page. And obviously we want something which is copyright free or something we're allowed to use. So if we do a search in images, image from Wikipedia might work. Let's see if this works. And that looks quite good. So, right, okay, we need to attribute this, but that's okay. It's good to attribute. If we copy the URL for the image, we can paste that in, and we can give the attribution here in the description. Let's just copy that. Okay, there's the information to give the attribute. We can use that description, or possibly maybe we should do it in the alternate text. That might work as well. As long as but it's good to give an attribution to somebody's work when they've put in a bit of time. So we have our banner image. We can have a look and see what that looks like. Not bad. And we'll just center that image. And in this mock-up, we want to add, I guess, what we're going to show. Well, we're going to have some sort of form where we send in a tank ID. So if you have a field here, tank ID, and then we'll have some sort of field where we're going to show that information. Let's just change the font there, thank you. Right. We can use a text field for that. And then when we've got our result, I guess we want to show some fields. We can just use some example fields here. For example, here we've got a tank name, another text field, and tank description. That would work. Okay. So this creates, and here you can see the HTML for this basic prototype web page we've created. But I think it'd be better if the whole thing was like black with white text. So if we change the text in these fields, and this sort of thing is much easier to do in a web editor than it is in when you're doing it by hand. So we just set everything to white. Good, and then we just need to look at the background properties for the page properties, and we can set the background color to black. There. Oh, it looks pretty good. We might want to re-justify these, align the fields to get a bit more professional appearance. But this formatting, we probably won't be using this anyway. We'll probably be using something quite different when we get to our MVC web application. But this allows us a prototype and a way of looking at what we might want to do. So we're going to add our web project here in our Visual Studio solution. So we add a new project, and it's going to be a web project, Visual C web project, and it's going to be a web application here, ASP.NET. So we just choose a catalog for the application. And a web, we call this what.net Maybe what.web. Yep. Now we'll get some alternatives here. We're going to choose an MVC application, which is good. Yes. We don't need to have a test project here because we've already got a test project, and we don't need to change any of the other default settings. So we create our web application, and this will add a new project to our Visual Studio solution. Okay, so we've created our ASP.NET application, which is an MVC web application with Razor views. And if we actually just start it, we can actually see how our default application looks like straight out of the box. And there we've got our standard default MVC application. So if we stop debugging, we can start to customize it a bit. We'll start by going into the home, the index page, and here we have all that text you saw, and we don't need any of this at all, so we can just get rid of it all. We can change the title here to what website. Okay. If we rerun the application now, we should see all the changes we made where we've taken away all the... There, we've got a much simpler situation. Okay. Now we can go into the standard, the layout, CSHTML. Layout contains the toolbar we see on every web page on our website here. So we can just change the title here. And in this toolbar we can add, of course, a new action which will take us to our search form for tankopedia. Now an action link has to have a link text, which we will call tankopedia. That's the text that appears. And then we need to have the action name, which we can also call tankopedia. And then finally, we use we have to name the controller, and here we'll just, since this is a prototype, basically we're going to use the home controller. So if we go to the home controller, we can create our tankopedia method. So let's just copy the text for that. Go back to our home controller. And here we can create a new method, which will be just need to stop debugging. It'll be a public action result. Tankopedia, yes. And so we need to set the viewback message. Set that to tankopedia, and we will return a view. Now this view obviously doesn't exist yet, so we can create the Razor view, and we can set it to tankopedia. And then we want to change the model here, because we're not going to use it dynamic. We're actually going to use a data model of type vehicle. And we need to reference our data project from the web project so that it understands what a vehicle is. So we set a link to the reference there. Very much. Driver should suggest yes. Okay, good. So we can create a private property here. We may or may not need this, but at the moment we just set it to vehicle because we may use it between different methods. We'll have a local variable here called vehicle model. Yes. And then we can use this vehicle model in our, we can pass that into our view so that it can display the different properties from our vehicle model, description, tank name and stuff. So we change the view to use our model. And then if we go to our tankopedia HTML, we can actually start to build the elements we want here. So we're obviously going to need some sort of a form, and we can put that in elements. So we can start our HTML begin form, and see, get the method. Here we're going to post to is tankopedia. That's the action we're calling. And we need to also define which controller it lies in. And then the method should be a post. We're going to post our data to the form. And then we can give it the form an ID, so it's uniquely identified. Yeah, we call it search form. Okay, so we've got our HTML form. And we have two cases here. We have the first case when we just come to the page, tankopedia page, then the model will obviously be empty, it'll be null. And in that case, we don't really want to display anything. But in the case where the model is not null, then we obviously want to show the tank information for that model. We shouldn't have a layout here. Must have accidentally created a view with a layout. We just want it on review. We have some style information we may want to copy across from our web page, which you can just paste in. We may want to move our style information, depending on if you're using style information on all web pages, we probably want to move it to the common style, the CSS page, but maybe do that later. So now we have we're pasting in our banner image, which we have from our own web page there, with the tankopedia World of Tanks image. And of course we've even copied the attribution here, which is important. And we can actually test our web form now to see what it looks like. Okay. So we go to the home page symbol, and go to tankopedia. We see. Now in our form here we had a number of elements. We had the tank ID and the tank name and the tank description. We can copy this form, although we're not going to use it exactly as it is in our MVC application. But we can copy it into our form here and use it as a reference. We just need to comment it out for the moment. Okay, so we want to add a background color to our web pages, and that we can use in the site.css style. We can change the body because we want all our web pages color of black. And if we test that, yes, we're getting a black background. Okay, and it should be the same on tankopedia. It's also a black background. Yes, good. So we should be creating a new dev element which contains the the tank ID we're going to search for. And we can use a HTML label to begin with, which gives it the text we're going to see, tank ID. And then we'll want a form input, which we can put a break line here, perhaps. We'll want a form input where we input the actual tank ID. And we can use a text, HTML text for text box. And we'll identify the tank ID of fields. Yep, in our model. Okay. Let's just check the style there. The style there is auto style is style 3 is white text. Auto style 3 white text. Yes, which is what we want, white text on a black background. And that's the same style. We also want white text on our tank ID form element. Yes, let's just take out that break line. And as you can see from our form, we need a new style element, the style 4, which will give it the right position on the page, roughly. So we want white text and it'll justify it. Now, when the model is returned, which contains tank information, we want to display some information here. For example, the tank name and the tank description. So we can just copy the grouping we had before, and this time use it for tank name. And here we're going to display the name fields on the model. And we want to do the same thing again for our tank description. And we just need to check the justification here on these. Should be style 5 and style 6. If you remember from our original web page, they had slightly different justification values. Okay, 5 and 6, that's good. And update the text there to tank description. And the model field also to tank description. Okay. And if we go back to our controller, we can change the input parameters for the method here, because obviously we want to send in a tank ID, which may be null, because the first time we called the tankopedia page, we were not actually sending in any tank ID. But when we do have a tank ID, we'll obviously want to fetch the tank information. So we can set our vehicle model. Here we're going to call the weight manager get vehicle method, as we saw in the first video. And to this we send in the tank ID. But that has to be a non-null tank ID. And this is an async method. So we have to make that as a task action result, of course. And we need to test before we call the what manager if the tank ID is null. So the first time it comes in, if the tank ID is null, we don't call the what manager method, the get vehicle method. And if the tank ID is not null, then we would need to cast it to a nullable tank ID, which we send into the get vehicle. Okay, and then that model is sent into the view if we have it. That's great. One thing here is, since we're using this post async in an ASP application, it's useful to have set the configure await to false. It's usually good practice. Okay. So everything's looking pretty good. I think our form is ready to run. So we can start do a test debug, see what happens. So we come to our form, and there we can see the text field for the tank ID. And now if we enter the 3089, which is the ID for the light tractor, and there we see we're actually getting back the information and starting to fill in our form. And if we try for the Tiger tank, search that one, there you can see we're seeing the Tiger one. Okay, so our web page is now displaying the information from our method that we created in the first project, fetching information from the tankopedia services. So our prototype works pretty well, but we want to prove this, and so here I've cleaned up the form a little bit. Now when the model is equal to null, when the model is empty, then we actually display the search field for the tank ID. And when we return the result, also when the model is not null, we have information, then we actually replaced all the other fields with an edit for, a label for, and an edit for, where we use the whole model. And we do this simply because it displays all the information we get back from our model, and I don't have to program in the code or code for every single field, which is easier to do. And so if we test it now, you can see the end result. If we go to the light tractor and we do a search on that, then you see we get all the tags, all the information that comes back from the World of Tanks API service. So our model is complete, our fetching service is complete, and our website is complete. And this is our very simple World of Tanks application, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Good luck with your own.